For over half a century, a dark and terrible secret lay buried beneath the surface of modern Britain. Towns and cities stretching from the far north of Scotland to the south coast of England, thousands of vulnerable children were systematically targeted, groomed, trafficked, and abused. Yet, the very institutions established to protect them, the police, social services, healthcare providers, and political leaders, frequently chose to turn a blind eye, paralyzed by a culture of political correctness and a fear of being labeled racist. The publication of the Independent Rape Gang Inquiry Report, chaired by Rupert Lowe MP, alongside survivor-turned-activist Sammy Woodhouse, has finally forced a national reckoning. This investigative documentary script reconstructs the scale of this systemic failure, exposes the cultural and theological frameworks that enabled the perpetrators, and details the radical legal overhauls required to deliver justice. But before the evidence is laid bare, the public must confront the ultimate questions that this inquiry raises. Why did the British state systematically ignore the industrial-scale abuse of its own children for decades? How did a paralyzing fear of racial tension allow organized criminal networks to operate with near-total impunity? What specific theological and cultural frameworks were utilized by these gangs to rationalize and justify the dehumanization of their victims? To what extent were local authorities, high-ranking politicians, and police forces actively complicit in silencing whistleblowers and covering up the truth? And finally, what radical legal, regulatory, and constitutional changes must be enacted immediately to ensure that such an institutional betrayal never occurs again? To grasp the true dimensions of the grooming gang scandal, one must first dismantle the myth that these crimes were merely a collection of isolated local failures. The Independent Rape Gang Inquiry, drawing upon decades of court records, police intelligence, and extensive victim testimonies, has established that organized child sexual exploitation constitutes a cohesive, nationwide phenomenon. While public awareness only peaked with the publication of the 2014 J Report into Rotherham, which revealed the abuse of over 1,400 children, the roots of this structural criminality stretch back generations. Criminological research traces the earliest recorded prosecution of specifically Pakistani-led rape gangs to 1955 in Bradford, shortly after the British Nationality Act 1948 enabled non-trivial migration from the subcontinent. What began as localized, sporadic offenses metastasized over decades, particularly escalating after the political transition of 1997, which heralded an era of orchestrated mass immigration and a subsequent expansion of the pool of vulnerable targets. The statistical data compiled by the inquiry suggests a scale of victimization that is difficult to comprehend. In a historic 2019 House of Lords debate, Lord Pearson of Rannoch asserted that extrapolating the findings of the Rotherham, Telford, and Oxford inquiries nationwide yielded a minimum threshold of 250,000 young white girls subjected to repeated gang rape, trafficking, and forced conversions. This staggering figure, once dismissed by the political establishment as an exaggeration, has been validated by the inquiry's independent mapping project, which confirms that these networks have operated in at least 149 local authority districts across the United Kingdom. The 2025 Casey National Audit further solidified this reality, noting that in multi-victim, multi-offender cases across Greater Manchester, 52% of recorded offenders were of Asian ethnicity, predominantly Pakistani, despite representing a small fraction of the general population. The physical footprint of this criminality covers the entire nation, proving that the British state presided over a systematic collapse of child protection on an industrial scale. The heart of the Rape Gang Inquiry Report lies within the detailed, first-hand testimonies of the survivors, whose lived experiences expose the precise operational mechanics of the grooming networks. The case of Chloe provides a tragic blueprint of how these gangs targeted childhood vulnerability. Following the sudden death of her father before her 10th birthday, Chloe was subjected to severe sexual abuse by her stepfather, an ordeal met with complete apathy by her mother. Seeking escape, she began truanting in her local town center, where she was targeted by groups of Pakistani Muslim men, many of whom operated as taxi drivers. Initially, the grooming was subtle, involving the provision of alcohol, takeaway food, and emotional validation that treated the 11-year-old as an adult. The exploitation quickly escalated into severe violence. Chloe was drugged with highly potent cannabis, transported across county lines, and subjected to repeated gang rapes. On one horrific occasion, her abuser forced a glass bottle into her vagina, causing a severe rupture that required emergency surgery. Despite her admission to the hospital with a split vagina, medical staff failed to trigger a safeguarding referral. When Chloe disclosed the abuse to the police, she was dismissed as a consenting prostitute. She was subsequently trafficked across the country for 6 months, placed in secure units, and eventually coerced into an Islamic marriage and forced conversion by an illegal Pakistani migrant seeking a visa. Subjected of Fiona further highlights the vulnerability of children residing within the state care system. Placed in a children's home at the age of 13, Fiona was immediately targeted by adult Pakistani men aged between 24 and 45. Care staff negligence was total. Abusers openly parked outside the facility, conversing with staff who claimed that recording registration plates was above their pay grade. Fiona was repeatedly raped by multiple men in local party houses, where up to 20 men would gather, including during celebrations of Islamic holidays like Eid. The girls were routinely demeaned as white slags, while the men asserted that Pakistani girls had to be kept pure for marriage. Fiona was also subjected to extreme sexual torture by Rambo, an illegal Pakistani immigrant who had entered Britain in the back of a lorry after being castrated in Pakistan for child abuse. The state's failure was compounded when Fiona's mother was told by a police call handler that describing the abusers as Asian was racist, and that she should be glad her daughter was being taught a different culture. Similarly, Michelle was groomed from the age of 13 by 3 Pakistani brothers who supplied her with alcohol and drugs. At 14, she was gang raped, beaten, and locked in a house. When the police were finally called, one of the perpetrators forced Michelle to return to the station to retract her statement. Incredibly, officers accepted the rapist as her appropriate adult and closed the file. Michelle became pregnant 4 times as a child as a result of rape, enduring multiple miscarriages and a coerced abortion. She estimates that 98% of her abusers were Pakistani, Iraqi, or Kurdish Muslims, and that she was raped by between 600 and 700 different men over a 3-year period. The later testimonies compiled by the Rape Gang Inquiry highlight an escalation in the use of religious coercion, extreme violence, and institutional failures that led directly to child fatalities. Grace was groomed from early adolescence, entering a violent 5-year relationship with an adult man characterized by domestic violence and coercive control. A subsequent partner, involved in organized grooming gangs, sexually abused her children. Despite her filing multiple stalking logs, police failed to seize devices or link cases, leading to severe mental illness and displacement. The case of Victoria's daughter exposes a terrifying failure of the state's counterterrorism apparatus. In 2023, Victoria's teenage daughter abruptly converted to Islam under the coercive control of an Algerian Muslim boyfriend. The college's safeguarding lead referred the case to Prevent, the government's counter-radicalization program. However, Prevent's involvement was catastrophically delayed. During an emergency hospital stay, police actively removed the girl from Victoria and transported her directly to the address of her abuser's brother. There, she was subjected to extreme abuse, strangulation, and rape while being pressured to marry him to secure his residency. Eleanor was expelled from school at 13, entering a pupil referral unit in an ethnic minority majority area, where she was refused admission to mainstream school because she was an English girl and would be the only one. Groomed by local restaurant owners, she was drugged, waking up in a house decorated for an Asian wedding before being abandoned naked by the road. She was eventually convicted under joint enterprise for providing first aid at a stabbing scene, converting to Islam in a young offenders institution purely as a survival mechanism. She entered an Islamic marriage, was imprisoned with her baby, and was taken to Saudi Arabia, where she was kept in domestic captivity before escaping. Tragically, Rachel's 12-year-old autistic daughter took her own life after a devastating institutional failure. After disclosing that she had been raped by a classmate, police discouraged the family, claiming it would be her word against his. The perpetrator remained in school, leading to relentless bullying and physical assaults. The night before her death, she took an overdose of colchicine, stating she wanted the torment to stop. Furthermore, Jen was groomed at 17 by Iraqi Kurdish illegal migrants, trafficked across the Midlands, and raped. She was subjected to forced conversion and marriage by an imam in a dingy flat, and her daughter was repeatedly taken to Iraq by the father, where the child was exposed to firearms, including AK-47 assault rifles. Finally, the testimony of Kate details an extraordinary, decade-long ordeal. Raped at 12, she was blackmailed with footage of the assault and forced into webcam abuse and gang rapes. When she reported the abuse, police coerced her into withdrawing her statement, warning her that she would be arrested if any detail was disproved. Kate witnessed the murder of a younger girl in a wooded location and was later trafficked to a canal boat where she was raped repeatedly, including, she alleges, by a serving police officer. She was held in a caravan for 9 days, subjected to severe physical torture, and forced to endure rape by a dog as men placed bets. Kate's abusers mocked her Christian faith, tearing off her cross and telling her that her God had abandoned her, illustrating the deeply religious animus of her captors.
And did you approach the police?
Yeah, I went to the police 5 times, at least 5
and what
times,
happened?
5 or 6 times. They just said there's nothing we can do about it.
What?
There's nothing we can do about it. Those are their exact words.
Were you explicit in what
Yeah,
you told them? So
yeah,
you said, I'm
really,
being
really.
raped by this guy.
I described really horrific things, and they just said there's nothing we can do about it.
While the previous testimonies highlight the dark depths of depravity, the statement of Dr. Ella Hill, a survivor who reconstructed her life to become a practicing medical doctor, exposes the most shocking and profound psychological resolution documented by the inquiry. Dr. Hill's past is marked by unspeakable brutality. She survived over a year of torture, including repeated beatings, strangulation, suffocation, and a planned honor killing that left her hospitalized with severe physical trauma, requiring her to change her name and relocate for her safety. Yet, the most startling and unexpected revelation of her testimony is not the physical violence she endured, but her radical, faith-driven choice to forgive. Around the 18-minute mark of her public statement, she reveals a complete lack of resentment, asserting that she makes a conscious, active decision to love her enemies rather than harbor bitterness.
I will not hate them. I will not hate all Muslims, not at all. In fact, I will love them. I will make a determined choice to love them, and for them to be my friends, and for me to cook meals for my friends, and take care of them, look after them, check on their kids, their families, everything. I will not be driven to hate anybody because of their colour of their skin or their background or their race or religion, age, gender, sexuality. That I think is really part of my faith.
Today, her closest best friends include Pakistani, Lebanese, Iraqi, Indian, and Sri Lankan nationals, and the primary charity she supports is a Christian organization based in Pakistan itself. This extraordinary capacity to conquer hate with love stands as the most shocking testament of human resilience in the face of industrial-scale evil. The systematic failure to protect hundreds of thousands of British children was not a simple failure of resource allocation, but was driven by a deep-seated ideological capture of the British state. For decades, the dominant political class, operating within a post-war multicultural framework, prioritized the preservation of community cohesion and the avoidance of racial tension over the fundamental safety of children. This paralysis began under Harold Wilson's labor administration in the 1960s, which introduced a minoritarian paradigm that treated ethnic minorities as protected victim groups, exempt from standard criminological scrutiny. This ideological shift was accelerated under Tony Blair's New Labor Project and consolidated in the Equality Act 2010, which established religion and race as protected characteristics, creating a chilling effect across public institutions. Police forces, social services, and local councils chose silence over robust investigation, realizing that pursuing networks of Pakistani men carried career-ending professional risks. The Metropolitan Police and City Hall actively denied grooming gang patterns, misclassifying the abuse as county lines to protect key electoral blocks and maintain their commitment to the multicultural narrative. Meanwhile, Greater Manchester Police focused on silencing whistleblowers and destroying care files in a bid to protect their institutional reputation and avoid career-ending allegations of racism. Within the healthcare sector, the NHS and broader medical services failed to exercise professional curiosity, treating physical trauma and psychological distress in isolated bureaucratic silos while discharging severely injured children back to their abusers, operating under the assumption that these minors were merely making lifestyle choices. Finally, local education authorities excluded victims for truancy and ignored on-site grooming, prioritizing the avoidance of administrative and political friction over child safety. The political calculation is evident in the actions of high-ranking labor officials. In London, Sadiq Khan repeatedly dismissed evidence of grooming gangs, claiming the capital was too complex for such patterns, despite possessing HM inspectorate files detailing widespread group-based exploitation.
Just how many grooming gangs have we got in London?
So what we have in London is young people being groomed, use your words, not mine, to be using county lines in relation to sometimes...
Okay, let me make it clear. Sorry, I wasn't clear enough. Grooming gangs that I would call rape gangs. Tell me about them. How many of those have we got? Not country lines, those particular groups.
To avoid any misunderstanding, can she define what she means by that?
Yes, if you look at what's gone on in Rotherham, where there are people taking young girls, grooming them for sex, that is what I'm talking about.
We know in London there are issues about exploitation of young people, but they're not as defined by the member in her definition of what those types of gangs are.
So are you saying we haven't got the same sort of gangs that are in Rotherham, Bradford and lots of other places in the country?
Just for what's a misunderstanding, what does she mean by that?
You know full well what I mean by that. It's all over the television. You know exactly what I mean by that. These gangs of people that are grooming young girls for sex. Do we actually have those in London?
Today we need to give a full answer. Can she be clear what she means by that? I'm not clear what she means.
How much clearer do you want me to be?
Khan's reliance on significant electoral support from Muslim voting blocs created a powerful political incentive to maintain a narrative of multicultural harmony. In Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham faced accusations of managing a public relations cover-up, while Keir Starmer's record as Director of Public Prosecutions was marred by reports of thousands of suspected grooming gang members receiving warning letters rather than facing prosecution. Even when Labour politicians like Sarah Champion attempted to raise the issue, they were swiftly silenced by their own party. According to the National Audit Office, the average cost of keeping a single child in a care home is £318,000 per year, nearly 5 times the cost of attending Eton. Despite this massive expenditure, children's homes functioned as literal trafficking hubs. Social care services, dominated by a therapeutic ideology that viewed children as making lifestyle choices, repeatedly returned groomed, drugged, and injured children directly to their abusers, demonstrating that the collapse of child protection was both structural and ideological. At the same time, we have just witnessed a monumental political shift. Sir Keir Starmer appeared outside Downing Street today, Monday, June 22nd, 2026, to announce his resignation as Prime Minister following intense pressure from within the Labour Party. While officially attributed to mounting internal party division, this historic announcement comes in striking, coincidental proximity to the release of the independent Rape Gang Inquiry Report, which heavily scrutinizes the historical cover-ups and political failures of the establishment, including Starmer's own record during his tenure as Director of Public Prosecutions. So this is the end of the video, and I want to close off with a few remarks. To truly honor these victims and achieve justice, we must protect the integrity of this case by being rigorously honest about the data. The widely cited figure of 250,000 victims is based on a linear national extrapolation of the localized findings from major inquiries like Rotterdam, Telford, and Oxford. But we have to recognize that this mathematical scaling is statistically imprecise, as this horrific criminality did not occur at the exact same extreme scale in every single town across the country. This distinction is critical. If we rely on a mathematical imprecise figure, the bad faith actors who want this entire issue to go away will seize on it. They will use it as an easy, convenient pretext to discredit the entire inquiry and completely ignore the devastating, genuine testimonies of the survivors.